Welcome to the Hank Haney Podcast on nofilter.net. The Hank Haney Podcast can be seen on nofilter.net and on my YouTube channel, Hank Haney Podcast. You can hear the Hank Haney Podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts. And today's podcast is brought to you by Bet Online, which is your number one source for all sports betting needs this season, from baseball, golf, soccer, right to all the top fights in the UFC and MMA and boxing. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds while the games are being played. When the game's over, head over to the online casino, get in on the game of either blackjack or poker, or unwind at one of the over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use the promo code BLEAV for your 50% bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts. BetOnline.ag is the website that you will go to. The podcast is also brought to you by Haney University, which is my website, haneyuniversity.com. You can go there and find out information about golf lessons from me at the golf practice in Highland Park, Illinois, where I am teaching up a storm and hopefully getting people to lower their handicap. That is the goal. And speaking of handicaps, golf handicaps have definitely been a talked about subject since the big debate. And I want to delve into the golf handicaps a little bit. First off, let's start off with the presidential handicaps. Donald Trump is a 2.5 or a 2.8 handicap. And I will tell you, like, I have played with President Trump before, and he is a very, very good player. He can hit the ball. He hits it a long way, especially for someone his age, and he is a excellent ball striker. So, your handicap is based on your best 10 out of your last 20 scores. And honestly, I would say that handicap for him is just about right. Joe Biden, President Biden, said his handicap was 6, then he changed it to 8. But he said that was when he was vice president. And actually, the records show that the last time he had a recorded handicap, which is still his handicap because he hasn't turned in any scores since 2018, he was a 6.7 handicap. So he's actually pretty accurate on that. Having seen his golf swing and his age, and actually just seeing him walk, there's no way he can play anywhere close to that. He would be like, if I was analyzing his game and just on the swing I saw online, I would think breaking 100 would be a huge challenge. But back in the day, it sounds like he was a decent player. But Trump can play. There's no two ways about that. So when they started talking about handicaps, I thought, you know what, this is interesting because, not many people even have a handicap. You know that it's like 13% of all golfers have a handicap. So when they talk about the average handicap in golf, it's really misleading because for the most part, and there's some good players that don't have handicaps, but for the most part, players who don't have a handicap are much worse than players that do have a handicap. And the average handicap for a male golfer is right about at 14. And for a female golfer, it's at 28, which means that a female golfer would shoot roughly around 100, best 10 out of your last 20 scores, and a male golfer would shoot roughly around 86, best 10 out of your last 20 scores. I've always thought that one of the things that makes golf such a great game, and that is so much fun in golf, is trying to see how low you can get your handicap. That's always that was always a goal of mine, and it still is when I'm teaching students, is that I want them to see some marked improvement in their handicap. So, like one of my questions to golfers is always, what is your handicap? Where are we? Where's our starting point? Where are we, and where are we hoping to get to? Do we have a goal? Do we, what's your handicap today? Do we have a goal? Then the next question I'll ask them is, what's the lowest score you've ever shot? Because I want to get an idea of maybe what their handicap could possibly be. I'll also ask them, what's the lowest your handicap's ever been. So are we trending up or are we trending down? And handicaps change, monthly, uh, but generally not a lot monthly. But there will be a change every month with the way your handicaps are calculated. So it could go up, it could go down, it could stay the same. But every golfer who plays the game, I think, should want to have the lowest handicap they could possibly have. Now, sometimes that's not the case, because it seems like in tournament competition, you get a lot of people that literally com- can't play to their handicap. They can't even come close to playing their handicap. And that's because when you play in a tournament, there's more pressure. When you play in a club championship, for instance, they're going to make the greens faster, they're going to put the pins harder, and it should be harder to play to your handicap. Same thing with club championships. I remember back in the day when I was the director of golf at Stonebridge Country Club in Houston, Pete Dye Golf Course, actually in Dallas, in McKinney, Texas, to be exact. But at Stonebridge, we had like 50 golfers who were like 5 handicap or better that were members. And yet when we had the club championship, nobody, could hardly break 80. And that's because the pressure, the course is harder. Like I said, the pin placements, the greens faster, they roll the greens, all those things, put the tees back, and the course plays a lot harder. So most people in tournaments can't play to their handicap. A scratch golfer, a lot of people think a scratch golfer is somebody who has a chance to play on the PGA Tour, and that is so far from being accurate. A scratch golfer is miles and miles and miles and miles away from playing on the PGA Tour, because remember, you get your handicap typically playing your home course. So you play it all the time. A lot of people play it so much they didn't have to bend over and read a putt. They know it exactly uh, before they even look at it. They know what way that putt's going to break and how much it's going to break, and they know the speed of the greens, and they know where to hit it, and they know where to miss it. And they're playing their home course with their buddies, and they get to a point where they have a scratch handicap, which means they should average 72 or roughly there. It depends on the course rating or the index of the course or whatever. But it's roughly, a scratch player shoots 72. But when they get in a tournament, they can't shoot 72. As a matter of fact, when a scratch golfer I hear scratch golfers a lot of times go to say they're going to go play. I hear them, they go, I'm going to go play in the U.S. Open qualifying. And I'm like, oh my goodness. To make it to the U.S. Open, you're going to have to shoot under par, and you got to do it. You got to play like 2 separate qualifyings. One just to get into the final one. You got to shoot under par at most sites in all these rounds. And a scratch player going to U.S. Open qualifying, a scratch player in a tournament like that is going to average about 78, 79. Like when I have people say, I'm a scratch player, I'm going to play in U.S. Open qualifying, I think, okay, 36 holes, they're going to shoot, between 156 and 160. 78 to 80 average for both their rounds. And if they shoot better than that, I look at it and I say that was pretty darn good. If they shoot worse than that, I think, well, they probably got a whole mental thing going where they were so far over par and they weren't used to being that far over par, and they took it straight to the moon, as we say, with their score. But scratch players shoot about 78 to 80 in a tournament. They shoot 72 home course, half their rounds, playing with their buddies. maybe a couple gimme putts in there every once in a while, and that's pretty much what they do. But the average handicap for a male golfer, like I said, 14; for a female golfer, 28. But that number would be way, way, way higher if you measured every single person who plays golf. So anytime you have a handicap that is a single digit handicap, you are a really, really good player. Even though it's measured, half the rounds on your home course, all the things I just mentioned, you're a darn good golfer, and you can definitely play the game. If you're a golfer that struggles to break 100, then it's easier. You might have a 25 handicap, something like that. It's typically easier to get your handicap lower when it's higher, obviously, than it is when it's lower. And what I mean by that is it'd be easier for somebody to go from a 36 handicap to a 20 handicap, 16 stroke improvement. I would probably make that equivalent to going from a 10 to a 7. You'd go from 10 to a 7, and that's about like going, maybe a 6, maybe a 10 to a 6 or 7. That's about like going from a 36 to a 20. So the comparison, even though it's just a few strokes lower for the 10 handicap, those shots are harder to come by than the 16 shots for a 36 handicap. These are just some of my thoughts on golf handicaps, and as they pertain to everybody who's out there playing. But when you're trying to lower your handicap, it boils down to my 3 keys to better golf. And I've mentioned these 3 keys so many times. If you listen to my podcast, hopefully you keep track of these every single time you play. And that is, you have to eliminate penalty shots, 2 chips, and 3 putts. Penalty shots are the biggest killer because you're adding strokes to your score without swinging the club, basically. I mean, you hit a drive, it goes out of bounds, you got to reload, you hit again, now you lie 3. So it is, for all intents and purposes, it's a 2-shot penalty. If you hit it in a lateral hazard, you at least get the distance, you get to drop it up there where it went in. It's a 1-shot penalty. But penalty shots are a killer. You have to eliminate penalty shots. You eliminate penalty shots, your handicap will go down. How do you eliminate penalty shots? You fix your big miss. Whatever your big miss is, your bad shot. Typically it's with a driver, because your driver is your straightest face club. And if you can correct your big miss, your slice or your hook, you're going to eliminate penalty shots, and your handicap's going to go down. The second key to golf is eliminating what I call 2 chips. 2 chips, 2 pitches, 2 sand shots. And these 3 keys hold true with every level of player. It doesn't matter if you are a 54 handicap player or you are the best player in the world. It is still the same thing. You have to eliminate penalty shots, 2 chips, and 3 putts. 2 chips. 2 chips, 2 pitches, 2 sand shots. Anytime you're in close proximity to the green, you have to get the ball on the green in 1 shot. And you do that by, first off, putting whenever you can. That is rule number 1. When you can, you putt. When you can't putt, then you chip. Chipping is when you have a minimum amount of air time and a maximum amount of ground time. You hit a lower shot, you're landing it short distance on the green and letting it roll to the hole. Chipping. When you can't chip, then you pitch. And you never pitch unless you have to, but you pitch to stop the ball. So if you have to come over a sand trap, for instance, then you're pitching because you got to pitch it over that trap and get it to stop. And that is a pitch. You only pitch with 1 club. That's your most lofted club, your sandwich. So you pitch with that. But you learn a basic technique on short game that gets the ball on the green every time. An arm swing, back and forth. Firm with your wrists when you're chipping, add a little wrist when you're pitching, and get the ball, make that your goal, to get it on the green every single time. Then the third key to better golf and to lowering your handicap is eliminating 3 putts. And this is an absolute killer because amateur golfers 3 putt way, way, way too much. And when they do, it's because they don't focus in on the speed of their putts. They think way too much about the line of the putt, not enough about the speed of the putt. Always focus in on the speed of the putt. And if you do that, you are going to eliminate three putts and you're going to lower your handicap. So every time you play, try to keep track of your score and keep track of your penalty shots, two chips, and three putts. You subtract that from that total from your score, and you get your coulda, woulda, shoulda. But it kind of gives you an idea of what you could do and what your handicap could be if you can clean up what I call the mess, which is the penalty shots, two chips, and three putts. Now I have two handicap stories for you. Number one was when I did my show, The Haney Project, on the Golf Channel, and I had Ray Romano on my show, and Ray was a 10 handicap. They said he's a 10 handicap. This is the information I got before the show started. They said he's a 10 handicap, and his lifelong goal is to break 80, and he's never broken 80. And I thought to myself, my gosh, if he's a 10, I said, he's a 10 handicap? They said, yeah, he's a 10 handicap. He's never broke 80. And I said, well, I can get him to break 80. All I got to do is just coach him around the course, tell him what club to hit. I don't even have to tell him anything about his swing. I'll be able to get him to break 80. That won't be a problem. So we go out and play the first time we played. And it was kind of a little round of golf just to kind of see where we were. We played at El Dorado Golf and Beach Club in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. Not an easy course. A lot of penalty shots, a lot of desert, a lot of arroyo. Lost balls are a possibility. There's quite a bit of water out there. There's some ocean shots and fast greens. Not big greens, fast sloped greens. A lot of two chips, a lot of three putts. A lot of penalty shots, hard golf course. Ray's a 10 handicap, Ray Romano. This was years ago. And we go out there to play. In the first round of golf we play, and Ray counts every shot. Like he hits his first tee shot over there in the arroyo. I said, Ray, go ahead and hit another one. He said, I don't take mulligans. I putt everything out, Hank. I putt everything out. I gave him a putt one time. It was like 4 inches long. He says, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? I putt everything out. I said, Ray, it was 4 inches long. Don't worry about it. No, where was it? Put it down. I want to put it in. He is the most honest golfer you could ever imagine. But anyway, he goes out and he shoots 127. And I said to his guy, he had a friend of his that always was with him. I said, he not a 10 handicap. He said, oh yeah, he is. He's a 10 handicap. I said, he just shot 127, and he is not a 10 handicap. He said, and the guy says, yeah, he's a 10 handicap. I said, I'm telling you, he's not a 10 handicap. And then he goes, well, come to think of it, I can't remember the last time he broke 90. I'm like, a 10 handicap is supposed to average 82. What, you can't remember the last time he broke 90? He is not a 10 handicap. So some people's handicaps are lower. They call them vanity handicaps. So their handicaps are lower than what they actually should be, and they want that lower handicap. And then other players' handicaps are too high, and they're doing that because they don't turn in their scores, and they do that to have a better opportunity to win tournaments that mean absolutely nothing anyway. So that's a hard one to figure out. But with Ray Romano, in my example with Ray's handicap, he was a 10 handicap, and I thought, oh my gosh, here's what's going to happen. I'm gonna get him. I'm going to get him like 10 shots better. He's probably like a 25 is what I kind of thought. Because we played a hard course the first time, but he's like a 25. I'm going to get him 10 shots better during this 6 weeks on this show. And that means that it was 6 weeks of episodes. I didn't practice with him for 6 weeks. I actually filmed with him, I think 7 or 8 times. So I didn't have that much opportunity to work with him, but I gave him things to work on his own. And I thought, I'm gonna help him get 10 shots better for a net of 5 shots worse. I'll get his 25 down to a 15. And they were claiming he was a 10 when we started, but that was a little a little low. It wasn't quite that good. But I will say this: Ray Romano broke 80. He shot 80. He shot exactly 80 the last day of our show, which was phenomenal. But a few years ago, I got a message from Ray, and he finally broke 80. And for someone to accomplish that is a breaking 80 is a heck of a is a that's a heck of a goal right there. I mean, you progress through golf. You want to break 100, you want to break 90. Breaking 80 is a pretty darn good goal, and Ray did it. My other handicap stories, I was doing a little research on the handicaps, and it said the lowest handicap ever recorded was Tiger Woods, and he was a plus 10 handicap. And I remember when we used to play together all the time down at Isleworth in Orlando. Isleworth was like the hardest golf course. The tees were so far back there. Tiger would always drag me back there, make me play those tees. Course was so long, and the course rating from those back tees was like 78.5. That means that if you shot like 79 or 78, you would be a scratch golfer. And at the time when we played, that's right about where my handicap was. And I would be very pleased when I broke 80 at Alworth from the back tees. And Tiger had no problem whatsoever averaging 68 from those back tees, and that would be a plus 10 handicap, the lowest handicap ever reported. So it gives you a Tour Pro. I think the average Tour Pro handicap is about a plus 5, meaning they'd have to add or 5.5, something like that. They'd have to add 5.5 strokes to their score, whatever they shot. So if they were playing in a club match or a gambling match, they'd have to give up that many strokes. But that's my example of the fact that there's a big difference between a scratch player and a touring pro. And you might think you're a scratch player. You're a heck of a player. There's no doubt about that. But don't be thinking about going on the tour anytime soon, because those 6 shots you got to shave off are they're the hardest ones to get. And it's really more than that, because you're not going to be playing your favorite course with your friends on greens every time. It's golf is a hard game. And anybody that can work that handicap down any amount is doing a good job. So that should be your goal. Try to get better, improve your game, count your penalty shots, 2 chips and 3 putts, create some accountability in those areas every time you play. And if you do, you will be on your way to lowering your golf handicap. Hope everybody enjoyed the podcast. We will talk to you soon on the Hank Haney Podcast.